Why do some members stay engaged while others disappeared after one event? Why do some people participate but never contribute? And how do you turn a group of participants into a community that sustains itself? How can we retain more members? How can we increase member engagement and participation? How can we turn passive members into active contributors? And how can we build a community where people want to stay rather than constantly having to recruit new people? These are questions I have explored through years of working with student community, international programs, sports associations, and volunteer-led organizations. Although these organizations were very different, I kept seeing a similar deep question. Why do some people become deeply engaged in community while others simply attend once and disappear? I think there is a lot more to this question than simply organizing better events. So today I want to share a few observations from the community I worked with and explain how they connect to my research on spiritual capital and human potential. The first thing I noticed that engagement often begins with relational attention. When I was involved in a university tennis association about more than 10 years ago, a part of my responsibility was to organize training and communicate with the members. But communication wasn't simply about sending announcements. If someone stopped responding or stopped coming, I would usually follow up and try to understand what was happening. Over time, this creates a very different kind of relationship. People knew that they weren't simply names on the membership list. Someone actually noticed whether they were there, whether they were participants, or sometimes they were, and sometimes what was happening in their lives. Many members eventually become very comfortable talking to me about their personal concerns and experience. So looking back, I think this tells us something important about community engagement. Before people become deeply engaged in a community, and they often need to feel that their presence matters. The second thing I observed is the importance of trust. When people feel seen and understood, they may become willing to open up and building relationship with others. This is important because organizations often treat engagement as a communication problem. If people aren't participating, the response might to be send more messages, organizing more events, and create more incentives. But sometimes the problem isn't lack of activities, it's lack of relationships. A well-designed event can bring people into the same room, but trust is what they make people want to come back. The third mechanism is perhaps the most interesting to me. People often begin to contribute when they recognize that they have something valuable to contribute. I will share a story. I saw it very clearly once I led a small book study group. There are only 4 of us, and initially we barely know each other. We just know the name of each other. But over time, however, we developed a very active group. We studied together, discussed things together, talked regularly in our group chat, and sometimes met at my place to study and eat together. But what becomes particularly interesting was what happened beyond the formal structure of the group. People started to contribute things that nobody had asked them to contribute. One person designed a hand-printed shirt for 4 of us. Another person invited us with a free concert ticket, a free membership museum ticket, and shared them with the group. And when I eventually have to leave this group, the members even created a scrapbook to commemorate the time we had shared together. None of this have been required or formally organized. These were things the members chose to. People began bringing their own resources, ideas, and attention into the community, and none of this was part of a job description. Nobody told them you need to contribute something. They simply began to say they had something valuable and they could bring to this group. This is what I mean by activation of human potential. People may already have creativity, leadership ability, social cognition, knowledge, resources, and the ability to care for others. So the problem isn't necessarily that they lack ability. Sometimes the organizations simply hasn't created the conditions for that ability to become visible and useful. This also helped me to distinguish between the three different levels of engagement. The first is attendance. People just show up. The second is participation. People interact with the activity and with other members. And the third is contribution. People begin investing their own skills, ideas, relationships, resources, and time into the community. But there is another level beyond it, and I think especially important is sustained engagement. Do people continue to maintain relationships when nobody is formally asked them to do? That was something I saw in my book study group. Even about 1 year later, after the organization no longer required us to continue the same activities, the relationship remained active. The formal structure had changed, but the relationship continued. This tells us something about the difference between an activity and actually building a community. I saw another version of this. I worked with the international students at the university. The original activity was quite simple. Students played games, talked, and met new people. But for international students, especially Chinese students who had recently arrived in the United States, there was another issue. The challenge wasn't simply whether there was an event culture and language experience and with whom they can feel comfortable. So I spent time talking with students in Chinese, asking them about their experiences, finding out whether they need help, maintain individually relationship, and inviting them to subsequent activities. Among students who contact with me, nearly all of them continue to stay in touch, and about 80% of them continued participating in my activities during at least their first semester. The important outcome wasn't simply they attend one event. There is a transition from strangers to participants to community members. And I think that distinguish is particularly important for universities, international programs, membership organizations, and other organizations that depend on sustained human engagement. When I look across those different cases, but there is similar process underneath them. Because these members, these people, are noticed, then trust develops. People begin to recognize their own strengths. They find their meaningful role, and they become willing to take initiatives. And eventually, they begin contributing to community. This is where these practical experiences connecting with my research in spiritual capital In my framework, spiritual capital is not simply about religion or personal belief. It refers to internal and relational resources that shape how people understand themselves, manage emotions, build relationships, acting according to their values, respond to uncertainty, and find meaning in what they do. And when this capacities enters an organization, they can become more than individual resources. They can contribute to trust, responsibility, initiative, relationships, and mutual support within a group. So one question that has become more increasingly important in my work is, how can an organization transform the resources that exist within individuals into collective organizational capacity? For example, self-awareness can help people recognize where they're capable of contributing. Emotional capacity can make trust and healthy relationships possible. Social responsibility can turn individual relationships into support for other people. A sense of meaning can make contributions feel worthwhile, rather than simply obligatory. And the ability to tolerate uncertainty and remain flexible can make it easier for people to take initiative rather than simply waiting for instructions. This also changes the way I think about organizational engagement. It's useful to know how many people attended an event, but I think organizations should also ask what happened after they arrived. Did they come back? Did they build relationships? Did they become more comfortable with other members? Did they discover a role of themselves? Did they share their skills or resources? Did they help someone else? Did they eventually initiate something in themselves? These questions tell us something that attendance members alone can't tell us. They tell us whether an organization is simply hosting activities or actually building a community. And the distinction has practical implications. For organizations whose effectiveness depends heavily on students, members, volunteers, participants, or community members' engagement. Engagement is not just about getting people into the room. It is about creating the conditions for people to develop relationships, recognize their own strengths, finding meaningful roles, and eventually contribute. This is the basis of my work with organizations. I provide workshops, leadership and team training, and tailored consulting around community engagement, human potential activation, team responsibility, emotional management, and meaningful participation. If your organization is thinking about how to strengthen engagement, helping people moving from passive participation to meaningful contributing, or build a stronger and a more sustainable community, feel free to reach out. I'm happy to explore a potential collaboration.